Hi, my name's Benji and welcome to Dice vs Cards. Today we're looking at Funkoverse strategy game and we're trying to find out if there's a delightful little miniatures game behind all that gloss and intellectual property. We're also going to find out how many people we can aggravate by calling this a miniature skirmish war game. And finally, and most importantly, we go deep and research whether it's possible that any game with the word funk in it can truly be respected by its peers. So let's see how this plays and whether this could be the next game for you. So the object of the game would differ depending on what scenario you select. It might be to pick up certain tokens or to control certain areas of the board, but you need that two-sided board. There's one setting on each side and you'll pick a side of wizards. On one side you've got Bellatrix Lestrange and Lord Voldemort in this core box, and the other you've got Harry Potter and Hermione Granger. You'll need the character cards for each of your miniatures and then you're good to go. So after you've randomly assigned the first player, that player will choose one of their characters and then take two of any of a list of basic and special actions. So the first one is to move, and when you move you can move up to 2 spaces, and you can always move orthogonally and diagonally adjacent. You can carry out a basic challenge against an adjacent rival, and that will mean you're going to be rolling 2 dice. And the defender is going to roll a number of dice equal to their defence, so Bellatrix will be rolling 2 as well. And there are a number of symbols to look out for. So this bang symbol here is a success symbol for the attacker. This shield symbol here is a success symbol for the defender. And this exclamation mark here equals 3 successes. So whenever the attacker gets more successes than the defender is then knocked down. You can assist an ally by allowing them to stand up if ever they're knocked down. You can interact with an item either in an adjacent space or on the space you're on, and generally that will mean you're getting points in certain scenarios. We then move to the special actions, the first of which is to do an ability. So each character will generally have around 3 abilities and a coloured ability token that will allow you to use those. So here Harry Potter could cast Flipendo, which allows him to challenge 3 to all adjacent rivals. So remember that basic challenge earlier? That was a challenge 2 because you're rolling 2 dice. But this will allow Harry to roll 3 dice against Voldemort and Bellatrix. And it'll act the same way. If Harry gets more successes than the defender, then they'll get knocked down. But it also says you can move each target 1 square. So the downside to using abilities is that you need to take that coloured ability token and place it on the cooldown track, on the space equal to the number on the ability you used. That effectively means you're not going to be able to use that ability for a further 4 turns. Finally, you can use items like this dagger or Felix Felicis that will have instructions that you'll need to follow accordingly. You can rally. If you're knocked down and you haven't got any allies that are in a position to assist you, you can use both the actions on your turn to stand up. And that might be necessary because if ever you're the victim of a successful challenge whilst you're knocked down, you'll then be knocked out and placed on the number 1 space of your cooldown tracker, meaning that you'll then have to respawn back in one of your starting spaces on the next turn. Taking both your available actions, you'll end that character turn by placing an exhaust token on there. It'll then be your opponent's turn to pick one of their characters and play, and so on until all characters have been exhausted. Then to end a round, you'll remove all the exhausted character tokens and move the ability tokens down the tracker, and when they come off of the cooldown tracker they're then available to use again. You then start with a new first player for the next round and rinse and repeat that process until the scenario endgame objective has been met and a winner has been declared. So that's how this game plays. What did I think of it? So what's good about the game? Well, firstly, credit shouldn't necessarily be given when gameplay exceeds expectations. But putting that aside for a moment, this is a really quite fun and cool little game. And if you bear in mind it's targeted at casual gamers and a younger audience, then you know what? Fair play. I can safely say we have a contender on our hands here. one that we could have had every reason to expect would just be slapped together to make a quick buck. And to elaborate on that point, one of the keys to that success is that there's a simple yet elegant list of actions each character can take, and they all have their own special abilities that do a really good job of complementing their personalities and skill sets, as well as that of the different scenarios each of the core boxes provide. Couple this with a deceptively sweet cooldown mechanic and you have some really tight, albeit simple and straightforward gameplay. Production value also gets the thumbs up. The slightly unusual for a board game scale of the miniatures still work really well with the settings on the board, and although there's certainly nothing like component bloat here, everything has a nice look and feel to it. Finally, and again this is a somewhat abstract point to make, but I really see this as a gateway game for certain audiences. Predominantly younger ones of course, but not many traditional gateway games even teach these type of mechanics, where miniature based combat is at the forefront. So what's not so good about the game? Well, for one, despite the smooth and elegant nature of the gameplay, it does somewhat lack in a sense of buzz and reward throughout, most notably in the combat. The dice rolling is, as you might expect given the target audience, very simple, and that's the primary reason there's no wow factor even when you win. The whole basic challenge thing just feels a little bit too homogeneous and sanitary. I'd also like to point out that you're certainly not getting fabulous value for money here. The rulebook effectively says for the optimal gameplay experience, games should be 3 miniatures versus 3. And that means getting not only the core set, but an expansion as well, which to me makes it somewhat cost prohibitive for what it is. So when all's said and done, I have to concede that this turned out a lot better than I expected. I actually had a blast playing this game, and I'm pleased to see that the Funko people didn't take the shortcut to board games and actually invested some time and effort into the game system. I also see the cross-pollination of different IPs a really big selling point as well. So with all that being said, Dice vs Cards are going to give a final score of 7.5 out of 10. This is a game I would highly recommend for younger members of the family, and it's even worth a dabble if you're a particular fan of whatever IPs they release content for. However, that's it from me. I'll see you next time. Right, Funko people, if you're interested, I would like the following IPs added to your product line. Number 1,